And when you think of school lunches, you may be thinking about bad tasting food you had as a kid.
Yeah, but experts say the quality of school lunch food has actually improved dramatically in the past decade. The problem is your kids may not have enough time to eat. Operation Education investigative reporter Tolly Taylor has been digging into lunch periods at local schools. And Tolly, a study shows that students who get less than 20 minutes to eat lunch really just don't have time to finish everything.
Yeah, and the key is how much time they have once they actually sit down with their food. It turns out most local schools have 30-minute lunch periods. But if transitions to lunch are slow or lunch lines are long, the impact may be felt more by low-income kids. That's because they're the ones who rely on school meals for half their daily calories.
When I get to sit down and eat and be free to talk with my friends.
Haley Leroy doesn't hesitate when you ask her favorite part about school lunch. She gets pizza for lunch when she can, and chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast. The fourth grader at Woodland Elementary in Elkhart says she has plenty of time to eat every day, but many kids don't. A 2019 Harvard study looked at more than 1,000 students. Most had lunch periods ranging from 20 to 30 minutes, but that's not how much time the kids actually had to sit and eat.
Because they didn't have enough time to eat, they were throwing away on average between 10 to 13% of their meal.
Cohen tells me that she went into the study expecting kids to just throw away their vegetables when they were pressed for time. But that's not what happened. She found that students who have less than 20 minutes to eat their lunch ate 13% less of their entrees, 12% less of their vegetables, and 10% less of their milk, compared with classmates who had a minimum of 25 minutes to eat lunch. And it can be even worse depending on when you get to the cafeteria.
And if you're at the end of the food line, it can be as little as 12 minutes to eat.
Murray is a pediatrician and former president of the American Academy of Pediatrics. He's been involved in school nutrition for most of his adult life. He says it's important to remember that school food has come a long way. School lunches started in the 1940s and breakfasts in the 1960s, but they weren't the balanced meals that are served today, as Edwardsburg superintendent will tell you.
There was a lot of processed meat, a lot of frozen food, especially vegetable kind of stuff.
Then in 2010, Michelle Obama and Congress pushed through the biggest changes to school food in decades, making them healthier with the Healthy, Hunger-Free Americans Act. But even today, there's no federal standard for how long lunch periods should be. That's left up to school districts to decide. And here's what local lunch periods look like. Depending on the school and grade level, they range from 20 to 50 minutes. Cohen says the ideal time is 30 minutes, with 25 minutes seated. If kids get this, she says, it shows up in their academic results.
So things like impulse control, working memory, all the types of behaviors that you'd want in a classroom that enable students to learn.
Elkhart schools have about 63% of students on free and reduced price lunch. I spoke to one Elkhart high schooler who says that while she has 30-minute lunch periods, she only gets 10 minutes to eat if she's at the back of the line. On the flip side, students had 22 minutes or more to eat when I was at Woodland Elementary last week. But I want to hear from you. If your kids don't have enough time to eat at school, I'd ask that you reach out and tell me your story.
And Tolly, there are things that schools can do to help solve this problem, right?
Yeah, on Wednesday, I'll tell you what researchers said schools can do to make sure that students have enough time to eat.
It's so important that food, as we know, is fuel for kids, so they need to have it.
Absolutely.
Tolly, thank you very much. If you have a story that you'd like Tolly to look into, you can call our Operation Education Tips line at 574-344-2580, or you can email operationeducation@wsbt.com. Do your kids have enough time to eat lunch at school? It is a question parents have been responding to on Facebook.
Our recent Operation Education investigation looked at school lunch times and studies that indicate they may not be long enough. WSBT 22's Tolly Taylor has your reaction and tells us why experts say there are solutions to the problem.
I asked parents on Facebook last week, do you feel like your child has enough time to eat lunch at school? The replies came quickly, with the majority of responders saying their kids didn't. One woman who says she's a lunch lady disagreed, writing, I can tell you from seeing it firsthand that kids have more than enough time to eat. The problem is that they want to socialize and play with their food. Another woman replied saying, I've been to lunch with my kids plenty of times to see that if you're at the end of the lunch line, you do not have enough time to eat. Elementary school kids are rushed. Obviously, there's disagreement, so I posed the question to local students.
Do you always feel like you have enough time to eat lunch every day?
Vanessa Martinez is a fourth grader at Woodland Elementary in Elkhart. She loves the chicken nuggets, the cornbread is a close second, and she likes the food options overall. But she wishes she had 10 more minutes to eat her lunch every day and talk with her friends. Woodland 4th graders get 30 minutes for lunch, but Martinez says it's less than that by the time she sits down with her tray. Harvard's Juliana Cohen says that's pretty common, based on her 2019 study. The study looked at more than 1,000 students and found that kids who have less than 20 minutes to sit and eat their lunch eat about 13% less food. Cohen says that slow transitions to lunch and long lines for food can decrease the amount of time kids have, but there are simple solutions.
The ordering in advance, so they're not standing there thinking about which choice they want, increasing the number of lunch lines so that we can get kids through faster, and then using swipe cards instead of having students punch in an ID.
Cohen says some schools have kids fill out what they want for lunch right when they walk into the classroom. Lunch lines move faster that way, she says, while other schools add registers or give students swipe cards to speed things up. There's no federal standard for how long lunch periods should be. And here's what local schools budget for time. Depending on the school and grade level, they range from 20 to 50 minutes. Cohen says the ideal is 30 minutes, with 25 minutes seated. But there's another common problem that both Cohen and Robert Murray, a longtime pediatrician with a focus in school nutrition, have noticed. Schools that schedule recess after lunch.
They'll guzzle a half a thing of milk, and they'll eat the dessert, and they'll take a couple of bites of the hamburger, and then they're out the door to recess.
A spokesperson for Mishawaka Schools tells me that the 7 elementary schools have between 40 to 50 minutes for lunch and recess. She says most students spend 20 to 30 minutes eating before heading outside to recess. But Cohen and Murray say this encourages kids to eat faster, which can become a lifelong habit. It also encourages kids not to eat all of their food. They both encourage schools to move recess before lunch. One person on Facebook agrees. She wrote, "Our school has recess before lunch, which helps them focus more on eating because they are wore out from playing."
This story obviously struck a nerve with parents, and so I first want to thank so many of you for reaching out to me. We had 166 Facebook comments and a bunch of emails from viewers. And the vast majority of you were saying the same thing, that your kids don't have enough time to eat, even the ones who bring lunch.
So many families affected by this particular issue. You know, one thing I know where my children go to school, and maybe where your kids go to school, you're able to go and eat lunch with them. You can see the process. I know you'd have to check with your school's policy and see if you can, but it's nice to be able to see how they do things if you want to be able to do that.
Right, and actually 2 of the experts recommended that. They said that a lot of schools are open to that and that it's often a good idea.
Yeah.
All right, Tali, some very interesting insight. And once again, what you learn as a kid can stick with you throughout your life, too, those eating habits, those bad ones.
Absolutely, and this is something we'll continue to follow over the next few weeks.
All right, very good. Tali, thanks. Operation Education is WSBT 22's commitment to investigate concerns about our children's education. Monday night at 6, you've heard how schools around the state have struggled with the new iLearn test, but we'll show you the strategies a local school used to place them #1 in the state on the English portion. Now, if you have a story you'd like Tali to look into, call our Operation Education Tips line at 574-344-2580 or email operationeducation@wsbt.com.